Hi, I'm Andy, and welcome to Common Ground. Common Ground is a platform for us to share the tactics that we've learned so you can become a better creative strategist and leader. In this module, we'll be exploring why we use design thinking, and we'll be introducing our process for research and testing. By the end of this short video, my hope is that you'll be able to reframe why human-centered design matters and be able to embrace the idea that understanding the problem to solve and the opportunity is everyone's responsibility. First up, what's the role of a creative team? Well, from my experience, it's rarely to implement something that hits the market tomorrow, and more often than not, it's about future-proofing your business. So you have to ask yourself, what does the future look like? The future could look many different ways. It could be a broken dystopia full of surveillance, inequality, climate change running rampant. It can be a phygital world combining physical and digital where we live precariously through our screens. Or it could be an ecosystem where we value collective health and well-being, and we look towards circular and regenerative products and services. Maybe you're saying, who cares? I care about my reality in the market right now today. A recent Harvard study revealed that when we reflect on the past 10 years, we accept that a lot has changed. But when we look forward to the next 10, we don't expect anything to change at all. Let me give you a quick example. NASA rockets are about 4.5 feet wide, but not because that was the best size to help put people on the moon. In fact, if you go all the way back to European gladiator days where they roamed around on chariots, the wheelbase was about 4.5 feet wide. It created deep ruts in the dirt ground, which made every other car break their wheels if they weren't also 4.5 feet wide. When Europeans built the first railway, they thought that was standardized and made the rail tracks 4.5 feet wide. And when the US decided to build their first railway, they thought, why not copy the Europeans? That must be best practice. And sure enough, made their rail tracks 4.5 feet wide. When NASA came to build rockets for one of the greatest human achievements of all time, they had to move them from one side of the country to the other by rail. They had to make sure these rockets were not going to topple off of the trains, and so the rockets were close to 4.5 feet wide. The point is that we're much more dependent on the past than we might think. We tend to rely on what's worked versus trying new things. The reality is these futures that we mentioned are already in motion. We just can't always see them and accept them. We're in the greatest period of change in human history. New ideas from creative teams just like yours, such as the telephone, radio, and light bulb back in the 1800s and 1900s, took somewhere between 30 to 50 years to be adopted by a quarter of the population. Meaning that as a creative team, you could come up with something new and kind of kick back, and it could take a long time before any competition would show up. But now new ideas like social media are reaching that same volume in a matter of months. Just take ChatGPT that reached over 100 million users in under 2 months. It's happening primarily because of network effect, among other reasons. But the point is, if it betters someone, they're going to adopt it, but they're just as quickly to drop it if it doesn't serve them. And one of the main problems is that businesses cannot keep up with the rate of change. This is actually something called Martech's Law, where it states that businesses change slowly while technology changes fast and exponentially. And because of this, a recent McKinsey study highlighted that a Fortune 500's lifespan back in the late 50s was 61 years. Today it's 18, and by 2027, they expect 3/4 of the S&P 500 to have disappeared. While that might seem aggressive to you, just think about the pandemic, where we saw 30 big US companies go under and over 100,000 small companies. So I think this exponential shift is something that we will see in the next 5 years. The main point is it's dangerous to stay in your lane. So what's the solution? The typical answer is a strong culture of creativity or innovation. In a recent study by Harvard Business Review of 3,500 employees in creative companies just like yours, they found that people don't believe in their innovation plan, don't know how to innovate, or just don't have time. In my own experience from Fortune 500s, the perception is that we're too big to fail. But the reality is we're a team of tens of thousands of people with too many cooks and very often a maze rather than a pipeline of new ideas. And as industries like ours within health and wellness become more and more attractive, investor sharks are putting us on the hook for things on time and in full, removing room for error and failure. So knowing that most of our businesses have a creative vision, process, or time allocated for creativity, what's happening in us as humans that's preventing us from unlocking our creative potential? Let me demonstrate this real quick with my team member, Jamie. Awkward to walk on screen. It's gonna be weird if you just, hi, Jamie. Meet Jamie. Jamie, go ahead and cross your arms. Okay, uncross them. And now cross them the other way. Good. You got it. Yeah, you got it. All right, thanks, Jamie. If you try this exercise on your own, I'd bet every penny I have, and I'm Scottish and I'm tight, so that's saying a lot, that you'll at least have to think twice about it. You see, as humans, we're hardwired for efficiency, making up to 35,000 conscious decisions and processing up to 74 gigabytes of data every single day. That's why we love simplicity, constraints, delegation, and groupthink, because it shifts some of that workload off of our plate. We've deliberately formed these superhighways of myelin in our brains that help us to do these daily tasks the easiest ways that we've learned, such as crossing our arms. And that's an amazing thing. Think about when you're trying to learn something new and it takes 10,000 hours to master it. But when it comes to creativity, this skill does not serve us and it creates a resistance to change. That's why Yahoo and MySpace could have owned Facebook, why Blockbuster could have bought Netflix 3 times, and why HP rejected Wozniak's Apple computer ideas 3 times as well. As a child, we're wired for raw creativity, making just 3,000 conscious decisions every day, with a beginner's mind and a sense of wonder and curiosity. But as we age, we do so for intelligence and hence efficiency. So again, to change that, we know that we need a culture of innovation and creativity. And in my experience, culture means a process that we can all live into. And one of the surest ways to guarantee a focus on curiosity and creativity is human-centered design thinking. This process has its origins post-World War II in the 50s and 60s, mainly in architecture and engineering, as they grappled with how to use technology to serve new needs and problems as they rebuilt society. The process was later refined by Stanford Design School, before then being commercialized and brought to new companies and industries by IDEO. Now, if you Google design thinking, you're going to see a lot of different visuals, from hexagons to figure of eights, double diamonds to wavy graphs. But from my experience, it tends to boil down to just 5 simple components: expressing empathy with who you seek to serve, defining the problem to solve in the opportunity space, ideating new products, services, or business models to solve for those opportunity spaces, prototyping and testing those new ideas and concepts before finally implementing them. These components can then be chopped up, repeated, diverged, and converged to suit your project scope and the time that you have. You'd be surprised to know that only 55% of businesses like yours are actually using this type of thinking today. And that's despite countless facts on how effective it is, including outpacing the S&P 500 and your peers by up to 200% and increasing conversion rates 4-fold. But that's not why we love it. We love it because it reframes your target consumer as a real person, and it reframes your target market as a real living community. It looks at products as finite resources, and it promotes iterative thinking and a scientific mindset. Tim Brown, an exec at IDEO, said that design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that integrates the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. In my experience of those 3, the excitement of a new technology or the needs of a retailer down market tend to outweigh people's needs. And for a process that's titled human-centered design thinking, I think that people's needs deserve an equal stature. I get it, technology is really exciting and it's often very clear what it could look like in a concept, as is feedback from a retailer that's ready to place an order. But if you bet alone on just these 2 inputs, chances are you're going to have some expensive retooling later on when you realize that your idea is not serving a real human need. The problem is that understanding people, including their behavior, attitude, and emotions, is difficult. As a creative team, when we try to raise the voice of real people, there's a saying that we hear a lot. I've heard so many leaders reiterate that if Henry Ford asked people what they wanted, he would have just made a faster horse. But I think that's false. I think Henry Ford did ask people, and I don't think they said they wanted a faster horse. I think they said they wanted to get there faster, drier, more comfortably, carry more, a whole list of needs and wants as human beings. And I think Henry Ford pulled technology and his supply chain to create a new solution for them. You see, insights are complex. They require patience and curiosity. The cool thing is that while we don't age for creativity, we do for things like empathy, emotional intelligence, adaptation, and seeing other people's points of view. These are some of the most important skills for market insights and research. Equally, we can take advantage of that Martek's law that we described earlier, and the fact that humans tend to change slowly, knowing that if we start to understand their deep emotional driving reason for things, why they do what they do, we can take advantage of creating new solutions for them. When we do the work to unearth what it is that drives human needs and wants, it tends to be much more meaningful and long-lasting than fleeting market trends and the hottest new technology. Knowing that design thinking should always be human-centered, what does that mean for insights? Who's responsible and where do they fit in the larger creation process? At COMN, we like to view insights as an evolution of understanding, building on a model written by Jan Chipchase. This model encourages us to begin with a hypothesis, collect data, transcribe into a common language, and sense make for a shared understanding. Then we contextualize it through prototyping and testing before reflecting on its impact as it goes to market. Why we love this process is it removes the assumption that insights are just about collecting data, and it provides a framework to turn that data into an insight that creative teams can use. If we take a traditional creative process as an example, typically it looks like a relay race, with different teams passing the baton to each team as they go. Marketing forms the brief, who passes it to an insights or innovation team who supports that brief with research. It's then passed to a design team to ideate and onto a development team to prototype and test, and then onto a go-to-market team to create sell-in material, and so on and so on. Now in this model, it would be easy to take that evolution of understanding framework and assume that it's the sole responsibility of an insights or trend team. But what if we begin to embrace a collective responsibility for insights? Assuming that just because we've collected data doesn't mean that we have the problem to solve or the opportunity space clearly defined. Not until we generate new ideas, prototype, and test them can we really say that we have a firm insight and an opportunity space ahead of us. In the modules ahead, we'll be diving into each of these processes and steps in more detail. We'll be sharing tactics that your teams can use daily to implement this type of thinking in your creative process. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next module.